Hi everyone, welcome to part 3 of Out of Hiding. And if you have already watched videos number 1 and 2 on this subject, perhaps there would be benefit to you, especially if you know that you've got hiding patterns in your life, to watch the 3 of these little videos consecutively. Okay, I want to tell you something that happened to me when I was in 3rd class at school, 9 years of age, and just learning to write with a fountain pen. And in those days you had to bring a bottle of ink into school, and you put some ink in your inkwell and you dip your pen in and fill your fountain pen full of ink. Now for me, this just wasn't working. My pen just leaked all over the place, and it took me a long time till I found a fountain pen that I could work with. So one night I was doing my homework, practicing using this pen and ink, and I was leaving large blots all over my copybook, but I couldn't start again because I was in the middle of a particular copy. And the next day, my teacher, who was a really old school teacher, she looked to me about 100 years of age, and she took one look at my copy with all of its blots, took it up and started to walk slowly around the classroom, parading my lovely work of penmanship, and saying that this was the worst example of homework and work with a pen that she had ever seen in all her long years of teaching. I think she was enjoying herself. She was just going on and on. Now, I was only in this school a year, was still trying to find my feet, was still hoping to make friends, which was slow in happening. And the last thing I felt I needed was this kind of negative attention with a teacher who was using shame as her method of choice to try and help me to learn something new, which wasn't working. And so I felt very powerless in that moment, very trapped, and I couldn't defend myself. And the only way I could escape was really inside myself, to try and blot out her voice, trying to disappear within from this barrage. And that's really how shame works. Shame brings such disconnection and such fear. It causes you to withdraw. You will do anything to stop feeling exposed from having that kind of negative spotlight shining down on you. And you learn from shame to keep your head down. You learn to stay quiet, that it's safer not to let your voice be heard. You stay in the shadows. You don't particularly want any kind of attention. And I want to share with you a Bible story about somebody who felt just like that. And I'm going to read from Mark's Gospel, chapter 5, reading from verse 25. And the context of this story is that there was a man who begged Jesus to come and help, and so Jesus was going with him. And the text says, a large crowd followed, pressing in on him from all sides. Now in the crowd that day was a woman who had suffered horribly from continual bleeding for 12 years. She had endured a great deal under the care of various doctors, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. So I don't know whether this lady was well off before those 12 horrible years started, but now she was in a state of poverty, perhaps having a lot of regrets from having spent all her money to no avail, now no longer able to afford any comforts, anything that might make her life a little bit better. And according to the Jewish law, everything she touched, everyone she touched, would be unclean. So she was more or less in that society an outcast. And 12 years is a very long time to be in any kind of solitary confinement. So she was just living a shadow life. Verse 27, when she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she kept saying to herself, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she knew she had been healed. Wow. But before this moment came where her bleeding stopped and she felt healing in her body, she had a decision to make. She had to decide, I am going to press through this enormous crowd. Can you imagine the kind of desperate courage that it would have taken for her to do that? You know, in COVID-19 season, we're all trying to avoid contact with other people, and it would just feel very scary in the season to have to press through a giant crowd. Well, that's what it was like for her. Touching others, making them unclean, risking their censure, risking their punishment, risking their condemnation and judgment. But she pressed through, and she got an amazing reward in her body being healed. And then what happens? Reading from verse 30. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. And he asked, "Who touched my clothes?" So his disciples replied, "There's a huge crowd, all pressing in against you. How are you asking that?" But Jesus kept looking around to see who it was. Then this woman, trembling with fear, came before him, and she told him her story of what had just happened. I'm not surprised that she was trembling with fear. And I've often wondered, why would God put her through that? This must have been her worst nightmare, coming into a spotlight like that, all eyes on her. Such a tension after 12 years of living alone in shame, contaminating everything and everyone that she touched. And I love that Jesus did not allow her to slip away unnoticed with just her body healed. He wanted to do a complete work of healing. He knew that all those years had left marks on her in other ways, emotionally, psychologically. And so he caused her to face her worst fear, to confront all that fear that had built up over those 12 years, to come in under that spotlight that she feared would be harsh, that she feared would bring judgment and condemnation. And instead, because Jesus was there, she found it to be a safe place. She found compassion there. She found understanding and complete acceptance. He wanted her to commend her faith to all the people, but also he wanted her individual story to be heard, for her voice to be given back to her. He brought her out of her life in the shadows and out of complete hiding into that place that was safe enough to find her voice again, to tell her story again, to throw off her cloak of invisibility. And in doing that, he restored her to a full and active life, and he put her back right in the heart of the community that she belonged to. Isn't that beautiful that Jesus would do so much, do such a complete work of healing in somebody's life to bring them out of hiding? But what about you? Do you recognize your hiding patterns of maybe those times long ago where you had to learn to hide from others, to hide within yourself? You know, it took that woman such courage. She had to take a giant risk to come out of hiding. But if you want to risk coming out of hiding, you don't have to do it on your own. Do it with Jesus and allow him to lead you forward, to show you how to come out of hiding in a way that's right for you. And if you will be willing to do that, you can have the same reward that this woman had. He said to her before he released her, "Go with peace in your heart." Let me tell you what that word peace means. It means a state of rest, calmness within yourself, freedom from inner striving and turmoil. It means tranquility. That will be your reward if you will choose to come out of hiding today. So God bless you in learning how to do just that.